And now to meet our second contestant, will you sign in after you have entered, please?
Beauty night.
Kelly Lange, right, ma'am? Is it Miss or Mrs. Lange?
Miss.
Miss Lange, and where are you from?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Nice to have you with us, Miss Lange. May I present the panel? Now, if you'll join me over here, we'll let the audience in the theater and the audience at home know exactly what your line is. All right. Panel, we can tell you that Miss Lange is salaried and deals in a service. And we'll begin things with Martin Ging.
Thank you, John. Miss Lange, you look so stylish. Have you anything to do with fashions?
No.
One down and 9 to go, Miss Felden.
Okay, I'm responsible, right? Do you remove any part of your costume at any time you're performing this?
Heaven forfend. Heaven forfend. Take a guess, Bennett.
Do you do anything that improves the condition of a house that you go into?
No.
I thought she was a plumber.
No, actually,
with water.
no. Martin's opened the door part way, but nobody took it up and opened it the rest of the way. When Martin asked if it was anything to do with television or the theater, and you forgot radio.
Oh.
Because actually what Miss Lange does is to broadcast traffic reports from a helicopter over KABC in Los Angeles. She is known to all those in Los Angeles who are saying, well, gee, I never heard Kelly Lange in the helicopter, as a result of a naming contest, correctly. Kelly, who does it in the morning, is known as Dawn O'Day, and her colleague who works in the afternoon is known as Evo Day. So that's how you will recognize it better, the KABC listeners in Los Angeles. That was fun, Kelly. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks a lot for coming to see us. Nice to see you.
This is the KNBC News Service with Tom Brokaw and Ross Porter and Kelly Lange. Now, Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. A lot of things aren't showing up tonight, including our theme music.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross Porter. Well, one of my favorite people is here with us today, and you're going to love hearing from her. I mean, the things she's done, unbelievable. Where do I start? A model, a helicopter traffic reporter, a radio and television news reporter, a TV weather forecaster, talk show host, broadcast journalist, first woman anchor on any of NBC-owned TV stations, first female news anchor in Los Angeles, regular co-host of several NBC network programs, author of 6 mystery fiction books, and much more. Here is the multi-talented Kelly Lange.
Well, hi, Ross. I'm exhausted just hearing you tell all the things I've done.
Well, there's so many things to talk about with you, and you've done so well. Let's start at the very first. You were born in New York. How long did you live in the East?
Well, we were New Yorkers, and my dad died when I was just 6 months old. So my mother took my sister and I to Boston, where I grew up. And I went to college back there in Andover, Massachusetts, Merrimack College. And after college, I came out here.
Now, when you graduated with honors at Merrimack College in Massachusetts, you majored in Shakespeare. Now, I'm going to think that gave you a chance to appear in some plays. Did that help your self-confidence in speaking on your feet?
Gosh, I don't know. You know, I never really thought about it much. And another thing I never thought about was the gender thing. You know, the first woman this, the first woman that, the first woman news writer at KBC Radio. And Betty White, the other day when all the news was about Betty, and she got that question and she said, I never thought about women and gender and being the first anything. And I thought, that's me. I never thought about it either. And it never occurred to me that a woman can't do anything we want. So I just did it, you know?
Well, what did you plan to do with a degree after majoring in Shakespeare?
Well, it was really English literature and Shakespeare. I intended to teach school. That's what my mother wanted me to do, you know, Boston and Irish and Catholic, and teach school and have something to fall back on. And I did get my teacher's credentials from the state of Massachusetts, which of course doesn't work in California, but yeah.
Well, you were later honored by your alma mater with the Alumni Achievement Award at Merrimack.
Yes.
Why did you move to Southern California in the mid 1960s?
Well, you know, my wonderful cousin, whom I adore, and I found out this morning, Ross, that she passed away. It breaks my heart.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Story. She was a stewardess for American Airlines, and she was so beautiful. She looked like the young Elizabeth Taylor, and she was my role model. So I applied and became a stewardess for United Airlines. And the stewardess training school was in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So they put me on an airplane. First time I'd ever been on an airplane in my life. I mean, we're talking the year one, right, Ross? And so I went to Cheyenne, and there were, of all the people in my stewardess class, there were about 20 of us, they passed out the domicile, you know, where you would be based according to your age. You got to pick. And I happened to be the youngest person in that class. So of course I wanted Boston, I wanted New York, I wanted the East, that's where I was from. And I got the last choice, which was Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City, I don't even know where it was, you know? But there I went, and I really was a good skier in Salt Lake, you know, that's where, the great Wasatch Mountain Range is. And from there I transferred a base to Seattle, and then transferred another 6 or 8 months later to San Francisco. So I got, and then, oh gosh, you're bringing all this up, Ross. My boyfriend was Jim Lange at the time in San Francisco. I don't know if you remember him. He hosted the dating game.
Well, let me just get to that quickly. And I wanted to ask you this. I've never asked you this question. We've known each other.
I never answered that question.
We've known each other for 50 years. I've never asked you.
No.
But I was told that one day,
Oh
Jim
boy.
Lang called you at home. You were not there. Your voicemail came on, and he said, "Kelly, Lang, call me." And you liked it so much, you changed your name. True or false?
I changed my name. My name was Kelly Snyder. That's not why, by the way. But anyway, then Jim had to come down, move to LA because he got the dating game, and then he worked for KNBC Radio too during a morning show.
Oh yeah.
And that's how I landed in LA. So I just happened to get the job in Los Angeles. It could have been, you know, Long Bony Fingers, Nebraska, could have been anywhere. But being that my first broadcast job was in Los Angeles, that became part of my lucky stars, you know, because LA is where everybody comes through, whether they're an author, a politician, a sports hero, everybody comes through LA to do their PR. So I got to interview everybody here and went from one show to the other.
Well, as you say, you wanted to be certified as a school teacher.
Yeah.
And I know some years later, and you'll have to tell me how many, you taught at Beverly Hills High School. What subject and how long?
All right, here's what happened there, Ross. My daughter was going to Hollywood High, and I was seeing terrible news stories about guns in the hallways and what have you. And I decided to pull her out of Hollywood High and send her to a private school. By that time, I could afford it. And then I took her to different schools around the area, and we sat in on classes. And I remember one school, and I won't mention the name of it, very important, big deal, expensive private school. And we sat in on the class, and the teacher said to the kids, well, we're talking about the maids that your parents work in your house, you know, the cleaning people, and they're Black. And I grabbed my daughter. I said, we're out of here. This is not where you're going to school, you know? And And anyway, I wanted to get her into Beverly High because I did some research on it, and they ran for classes just like you do in college. It was very, very cool education. I went over there and I was told, no, to get into Beverly High, to get a child into Beverly High, you have to either live in Beverly Hills, which I did not, or work at Beverly High School, which I did not. So I said, okay, I'll work here. I'll teach here. I'll teach journalism. And she said, everybody wants to get their kids into Beverly High. Zsa Zsa Gabor wanted her child to come here, and we couldn't take her. She lives up in, I don't know where, somewhere, Bel Air or something. And I said, well, Zsa Zsa can't teach journalism. I can. And so they took me on. They hired me. I didn't take any money. I refused to take any money. And I taught for as long as Kelly was there. And it was her third year and her second, third, and fourth year of high school. Right. And it was so easy for me because I would bring over all you guys. You were already gone, but you had to bring Brokaw, Jess Marlowe, Brian Gumbel, all the sports guys, and Abernathy, remember Bob Abernathy? And, yeah. They would sit in on a class with me, and the kids would be able to talk to them. Oh, so it wasn't really a terribly tedious job for me, but it was terrific. It got my child graduated from Beverly High, and everybody was happy.
Well, just a sidelight to that, for those of you who didn't know, there were 19 oil wells located adjacent to Beverly Hills High School.
Yes.
They were all plugged 2 years ago. Did the smell ever interrupt you during your teaching over there?
Oh, no. And actually, I did teach some journalism. I'm not just saying I brought the celebrities over with me, but I did. I worked out a whole curriculum for myself, and I especially taught them how to get a job. I talked about that a lot, and there were a lot of kids interested in doing it. I hope some of them made it.
You were a model in 1967.
Yes.
And you went to a shopping mall in Buena Park, California. That day changed your life. Tell everyone why.
Oh, yeah. Now, I was a model. I hated modeling, by the way, but it was a way for me to make, a good deal of money. I had a child to bring up. And, I had just really recently moved. Not too long, well, I guess maybe a year or so, to LA with Jim. And I saw the LA Times had an ad saying KABC radio is searching for a ladybird. What was a ladybird? It was a woman who was going to fly in a helicopter and do traffic on the freeways. So I said, why not? So I went down there. And this first one, Ross, was in Studio City on Riverside Drive.
All right.
And I went over there, showed up, and there was a big long line of women waiting to get into this trailer that they had turned into a studio. And I stood in line, and they gave me a form to fill out, and I wrote my real name, Kelly Snyder. This is how I got the Kelly Lange thing, Kelly Snyder. And I got into the trailer an hour later when it was my turn. They sat me down, and it was a woman dressed in a spacesuit that was running this contest. She pinned a number on my shirt, put a headset on my ears, and said, all right, now when you hear the engineer say begin, then state your name and read this. And she gave me a copy, a piece of paper, and I looked at it. And when he said begin, I said, I'm Kelly Snyder. And I read the copy, which was traffic on the Hollywood freeway is backed up through Cahuenga Pass, and traffic on the 101 and traffic on the 405 is very boring, very dry. So when I got finished with it, I said, oh, so can I do it again? Because now I can give it a little more life now that I know. And the woman said, no, everybody gets one shot. So, and she threw me out of the back door of the trailer, and she said, next. And another woman came in, and she looked at me because I'm still looking up what just happened, and she said, and you, and pointed to me. She said, don't you try coming to it. Don't you come to another one of our locations, because that is also against the rules. So, but she gave me the idea, right? So I waited, and that's when I noticed that the ad was in the paper, the LA Times, every day. And it was at a different location everywhere between Santa Barbara and the Mexican border, which was the radio station's coverage area, for KABC. So I waited a decent period, a couple of weeks, and I picked Buena Park, California. You're right. Different direction. Instead of wearing a skirt, I wore pants, and I had long hair. I put it up under a hat, changed my look, changed my name. And I used Jim's name because I used his address, and we didn't live together, obviously. Why is that obvious? I don't know, because I was a good Catholic girl. Anyway, I put his address and his phone number so that if I got a call, he would get it, because I would be cheating, I didn't want them to remember that I was the same. I came, and so then when and then on the drive to Buena Park. Oh, and the night before, I wrote my own copy. I am a writer, you know that.
Yes,
So
I do.
I wrote very funny stuff. In my copy, I had a guy who was on the 405. Traffic was so terrible. He was in a camper. He went up top and sat on the camper with his legs crossed and a cup of coffee and was reading the paper, stuff like that. Ridiculous stuff. And then on my drive from my house to Buena Park, which was about an hour, I memorized my copy. So that when I got in line, the same long line of women, it was the same woman, and my heart's going boom, boom, because I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get caught. I had Catholic guilt, right? And but she didn't notice, obviously, because they were everywhere, all over. It was hundreds of thousands of women who entered this contest. So she said the same thing. She said in the headset, said, when begin, state your name and read this. And she gave me the copy, and I looked at it. It was the same thing that I had read in Studio City. So I said, what if I used my own words? I might be more comfortable. Is that okay with you? And she says, I don't care. She didn't care. She'd been all over the place. She said, sure, whatever you want to do. So I then, when he said begin, I said, good morning, I'm Kelly Lange, and blah, blah, blah. And, and I started saying my thing, and I was so good, really, because I had it down. And that she said after, she said, oh my, she said, so where are you going to be in case we want to call you? And I said, I will be sitting on the curb in front of your radio station, or something like that. I mean, it was funny. So I did get the call, and they told me that I was one of the top 79, because there was 79 on the dial, on the 79 in their search for a ladybird. Would I come in and have another interview? So I went to work, and I wrote another thing, a different copy. I went in, and then and Jim told me, he said, because he was working for KNBC, and he said, look, I know radio. All right. He said, they already have somebody to do that job. They're not going to be giving a job. This is just a great big PR situation that they're all over, and everybody's interested in it. And he said, so don't bother. You're wasting your time coming back and forth. But of course, did I listen to him? No. So then I was one of the top 40. Then I was one of the top 25. And they finally, when they got down to the top 6, they brought 6 of us into LAX, where they had a helicopter set up on a private lot. And they would have put us in the helicopter one at a time and go up and look down and tell what we were seeing. So the 6 of us are sitting there. We're a nervous wreck. The first girl, they put her in the helicopter. She went up, and we could hear her, So she was talking about there's trees and there's houses. And then she said, I'm so scared. I just wet my pants. I have to come down. And I mean, I'll never forget that. They took her down, and I announced to the crowd, I said, we were 6. And now we are 5.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did get the job doing morning radio, and it was, and of course I told you I had my daughter, and she was a baby, and a lot of times I couldn't afford to have a babysitter come in, at that hour of the morning, and so a lot of times I would just throw her in the back seat of the helicopter and bring a ducky and a book or something, and and she'd be fine. And then we'd land the helicopter at some point during a break, because I did a spot every 9 minutes in the helicopter.
Yeah.
And she was fine. She grew up to be normal and a big Dodger fan. What can I say?
They gave you the 6 a.m. to
Oh,
9 a.m. segment, and you were called Dawn O'Day. Now, did you have to wear those tight-fitting silver jumpsuits even in the helicopter?
Yes, silver lame stretch jumpsuit with a big logo right here that said KABC Dawn O'Day. They had a contest. I mean, I was just trying to get used to my new phony name, Kelly Lange, and now and the person who won the contest got to name me, the naming contest. So I was Dawn O'Day, which, I hated, but hey. And I was going to tell you, Ross, I remember my salary. You always remember your first money.
Oh, yeah.
And they paid me $10,000 a year, but that was, back in the Stone Age, right?
Yeah.
And for $10,000 a year, I was able to own a house, to drive a Jaguar XKE, to pay for a nanny for my child. I mean, that's the difference between then and now. Everything was, a nickel for this and 15 cents for lunch. And, I mean, I'm not going to say my age, and don't you dare ask me, but it's all over the internet anyway. And I'm contemporary of yours and Brokaw's and Tom Snyder's and everybody's, so you know how long ago that was. What a different time it was, huh?
Yeah. Did you ever do the evening shift of traffic or morning only?
Well, they fired me at one point, a couple of years in, because they wanted to save money. They fired both of us, and they put they had the pilot doing it. And then, but Jack Myers, who was my boss, program director over KBC, he really liked me, and he called me in and he said, look, I don't want to lose you. I want you to be a news writer. And I said, I don't know how to do that. And he said, it's all right, we'll teach you. And that's how I became a news writer. I was the first news writer in the newsroom that was a woman. And I remember he brought me in the first day and introduced me, and there were 11 guys. And one of them said, I mean, they were kind of bored. Yeah, okay, hello. And busy, in the morning, busy for the morning news block. And so one of them said, oh, good, now we have somebody to make the coffee. And I never forgot that, and I said, oh, guys, I'm sorry, I don't drink coffee, so I don't even know how to make it. I won't be making the coffee. And that kind of told them that, I'm not going to scrub their floors or windows either. And, but I learned how to write because they gave me the bad shift there too. The overnight, the Cub got the overnight. That was from midnight to 8 in the morning, but that's a whole nother story. And then the pilot wasn't doing very well. And one of my jobs as a news writer was to feed him traffic information, but he just didn't have it. He had it to fly, but not to broadcast. So they asked me to come back on the air and do the morning and the evening. And then in between, I was doing the modeling. I mean, I've always worked hard. Haven't we always worked hard?
Well, you've been one of the hardest workers I've ever seen.
You had to.
That's been one of your strengths forever. During that period, Kelly, when you think about it, and I was looking back at it, there were 3 helicopter traffic reporters in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Who were killed in crashes while on duty. Did you have any close calls?
Yes, I had 3 of them. I won't, go chapter and verse, but on the last one, we were almost hit head on. We had a gentleman's agreement between all of us up there that we would fly the right side of the freeways coming and going and then this time there was a fixed wing guy, and we were in a fixed wing then because that chopper was down for service. And there was a guy who owned an airplane, had a pilot's license, and was taking his secretary to Vegas for Thanksgiving. And he hadn't filed a flight report and didn't have any running lights on. And my pilot was on the right side where we were supposed to be. And he was coming the other way on the same side. And we damn near hit the other plane. My pilot made a maneuver and he flipped over and brought us skidding in to Van Nuys Airport.
Oh,
That was at the end of my broadcasting. It was my third near miss, and I was trembling, and I got out of, and my pilot was crying. It was that close. He was a big strapping guy, and he
Oh.
was crying. And I got out of the plane and went into the airport and called my boss at home. And I said, and I was kind of, sniffling. And I said, Jack, I got to resign. He said, what are you talking about? What resign? When? And I said, looked at my watch. I said, as of 6 minutes ago, I can't do this anymore. And I explained what happened. And so he said, come in the morning to the station and we'll talk about this. But I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And in fact, when I finally went to television, one of my prerogatives, one of my deals was I will never fly in the helicopter. I couldn't do any stories from, and they wanted me to, because I knew how to do that, but I couldn't.
And let me just interrupt. One of the three men killed,
Oh, yeah.
Francis Gary Powers, who was
Oh.
at Channel 4,
Oh,
the man who, of course, was involved with the U-2 and the spy mission over Russia. Did you work with him at the same time?
oh, yes. Oh, Ross, you're bringing tears to my eyes again. And Jess Marlowe was very, very close to Frank. And he reported the story and cried. What happened was he wanted, Francis wanted so badly to be a reporter. And we bought that very heavy helicopter from Channel 5. They created that great big helicopter with all the cameras, all the equipment. And he had never flown a helicopter, but they had him take lessons and learn how to fly a helicopter. Not that hard. I learned too. So he was covering a fire in Santa Barbara, and he had to get it back. That was when we were putting the film in, in solution. There were no cell phone, there were no mini cams or anything.
No.
So he had to get the tape back to the station to be developed to get on the early news. And he had X amount of gas, and he thought he could make it. He didn't take into consideration how heavy this helicopter that we owned was. And he ran out of gas, Ross. It was just so awful. He was such a lovely, lovely man. And also,
that was about 4, I think you were there, what, 4 years doing the helicopter
yeah,
assignment. And then you were hired by KNBC, Channel 4 in Los Angeles.
yes.
Did you approach them, or did an agent do that for you?
Well, that's another long, interesting, I think, story. I didn't have an agent. Who had agents then? I certainly didn't. But anyway, somebody from Channel 4 called me because they had remembered that I had come in. I was looking to get into television, and I went to every single station. There were 7 of them then, Ross. ABC, CBS, NBC, and the 4 independents.
Right.
And I went to every one of them one by one, made appointments, and to ask them if I could have a job, And it was no, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of them heard me on the radio in the morning because I was on when they were driving to work. And I remember the guy from CBS 2, Channel 2, said to me, you are terrific. I hear you every morning. You're fun, you're funny, you're good. He said, but I'm sorry, we have our girl. And that was Ruth Ashton Taylor.
Yeah, sure.
And I thought that's put me in my place. Wow. These stations want an anchor. There was only one at that time, an anchor and a commentator and a sports guy and weather person and a girl. That's where we fit in. One, right?
Right.
But NBC, the guy there remembered, or a woman called me and she said, we remember you came in to talk to our program director. And I want to tell you that we have decided to put a woman on the weekend weather. Are you interested? And I said, oh, yes, of course I am. When do I start? She said, well, it's not exactly that way. We're going to ask you to come in and interview and audition for the job. So I said, okay. And she said, you can have, as of 2 weeks from now, we're interviewing on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So when would you like to come in? I said, the earliest you have. So I went in on a Wednesday and I got there and all these women were there. Ross, they were all gorgeous. They went to the model agencies, the theatrical agencies, beautiful, tall, leggy, gorgeous, lot of hair, women and me, okay? So, and then I sat there the whole time while they took one after another. And the drill was this. They had set up 3 panels, glass panels, on a contraption, and they had a guy who would send out the first glass panel, and the candidate behind the panel had to write backwards so that it would come out frontwards on television. That was what they were doing. They were going to do that. And so they sent out the first one, and it was millibars and all this stuff I didn't understand anyway. And then the map of California would come out, and I had to put numbers backwards on TV, with chalk on the glass. And everybody was doing that, and all these gorgeous women were up there, and they were writing backwards and frontwards and giggling and dropping the chalk, and it was terrible, but they were all gorgeous. And then they ran out of time, and they said, okay, come back tomorrow, everybody, because it was going to be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I was scheduled for Friday. By that time, I forgot to tell you, the main thing was that first day after, it's a long time ago, Ross, you know.
I know.
First day after everybody, they said, go home, everybody, come back tomorrow. I stayed until everybody left. And then I watched as the same guy who was sending out the glass panels pushed the set out of the elephant doors in the studio and down the hall. And I followed him. And he went on the big elevator with the set, brought it down to the basement. Did you ever go in the basement at NBC, Ross?
No.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. Here, I'm a kid, you know, I'm looking, here's the set for Hollywood Squares over here, Days of Our Lives over here, you know, and he pushes the set somewhere to park it till tomorrow, the next day, because they got to use the studio upstairs. So I said to the guy, I said, you know, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be auditioning for this on Friday. Would you mind if I just picked up the chalk that was on the ledge and just tried writing backwards on it a little bit? And he said, okay. So I did. I got behind it, and then he got into it, and he started pushing out the California map, pushing out the country map, and telling me this and pushing it back, and I did it, and I started drawing trees. I'm pretty artistic, by the way, and clouds and rain and the big sun and all this. So he was great. He worked with me for an hour. I went home. Yeah, I don't know what else he had to do. He was getting paid for it, but he didn't do that. Anyway, I went home, and for the next 2 days, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror with chalk, and I practiced so that by the time Friday, I was good, Russ. And I had a whole thing worked out where I was talking about here and the different, you know, the deserts and the beaches and blah, blah, blah. I had it down. I was good. I wrote backwards. I made trees, and I got the job, hands down. So I guess I saw, you know, in the newspaper, somebody had interviewed me about what I was about. And the headline in the LA Times said, Kelly Lange tells how she lied and cheated to the top.
Oh,
You know, I thought, I felt it was being creative, you know? So, and it was, and, you know, it was supposed to be a joke, but I think if we can pass that on to young people to think out of the box, you know?
yeah.
And work. Oh my gosh, work. Didn't we do that, Ross Porter?
Well, yeah, but I'm thinking to myself, everybody knows, and you know, you're not a meteorologist.
Oh,
So
no.
how did you prepare or sound like one? Folks, the high is over Canada and the low is over Arizona, and they will collide day after tomorrow. I mean, how did you do that?
Well, first of all, you know, I studied, I researched, and every day I and all the rest of the weather people you saw then and you still see now made a call to the National US Weather Service, right? And I made friends over there, and they were willing to give me all kinds of stuff, and they did. So I was able to use that with the nuts and bolts. But there was another shtick that I dreamed up myself because I was doing the weather with Tom Snyder. And you know, Tom loved you and he loved me. He didn't like a lot of people, and most people there did not like him, but he loved you and me, and we loved him. And so I'm doing the weather, and I would pick out a different part of the coverage area every night. Like, oh, in Pear Blossom, they're having their pear festival on the weekend. And I remember, and then Tom would always bat it back and forth, and he'd make his his sort of blue jokes, this sort of right under what was available.
Yeah.
We did that then, we could. And I remember saying, I had a picture of the woman who was the melon queen of someplace. And I say, and I said, Tom, and she said she would love to show you her melons. She was head of the melon festival. And Tom would say, oh yeah, I want to see her melons,
Yeah.
We did that every night.
Yeah.
And we had fun, and it was funny every single night.
And you would say it will be 68 degrees in Pear Blossom as you're walking by all of the exhibits.
Right. For those of you who are going to the Melon Festival in Pear Blossom, it's going to be, 82 degrees, very warm, peel off and wear your halter top or something. I remember one time I got in an elevator downtown going somewhere, and the elevator door opened and out came a whoosh of pot. There were two guys in there. They were smoking marijuana,
Oh.
And I got in the elevator and stood facing the door like you do. And one guy said to the other, oh my God, that's the lady who talks dirty on television.
Oh.
They had
All right.
so many.
Now,
Yeah, go
how
ahead.
did you go about convincing the news director that you wanted to do news?
That I wanted to anchor and do and report.
Just
Yeah.
do news and get off the weather.
Well, I'll tell you, that too is another story. We were winning everything. We hands down, we were number one. And I remember, do you remember Joe Bartlemy? He was head of the
You
station.
bet. Sure,
And
you
he
bet.
came out and he said, well, we have a new contract for you. And it was much better. It was terrific. And another 4-year deal. And I said, Joe, I want to anchor the news. I want to report. I want to get out on the street and do the news. And he said, well, we can't do that. You're part of our team. You're a big part of it. That would mean we have to get somebody to replace you. And it would mean that putting you from the weather to a news, nobody would believe you. You don't have the credibility. And I said, yeah, I can do it. I said, and if I can't do it here, I'm going to go do it. He said, who's going to hire you? Nobody's going to hire you. But I took that chance too. And I didn't sign the contract. They kept bringing me more money, more. And then they sent me to New York. They said, we who was it? Mulholland, Bob
Was
Mulholland.
All right. Was
Was
Sid
head of
Graw
it.
part of that? Sid Graw?
Sid Graw, sure, yeah. Sid Graw is the one who grabbed Tom Snyder out of wherever he was in
Philadelphia.
No, it was, yeah, Philadelphia. So they put me on an airplane, first time I'd ever ridden first class, and sent me to New York to get me to sign that contract. And I bought a new suit, looking good, and when I got there, and Bob Mulholland met with me, and he said, nobody's going to hire you doing the news. None of the stations. I know them all. I know the network stations. I know all the general managers. And but look what we're giving you. And it was the moon, and I said, no, I really want to do news now. And he got up from his desk after about an hour and of the interview, and he came around to me and he put his arms around me and he said, Kelly, you are either the bravest person I've ever met or the stupidest. He said, I wish you luck. And so I went back to LA, and I was packing up my office because we were finished. It was the last of my day. So on the air, and John Severino, remember John?
Yes, I do.
Very good friend of mine. He was head of ABC News.
Right.
And
Channel 7.
yeah, he offered a job anchoring the news on one of the newscasts and doing the morning show and this and that. And then NBC had in the contract, you remember the meet and match? They had 7 days, calendar days, to meet and match the conditions of the offer you got. And if they can do as good or better, if they can match it or do better, then you have to stay at Channel 4. I wasn't even aware of that in my contract, but there it was. Because who reads those things, But and they did match it. that's how I became an anchor. Now, interestingly enough, it was not easy. The first couple of years, nobody wanted me as an anchor, not Brokaw, not Snyder, not even Jess Marlowe. No, because it was a man's enclave. It wasn't for women. And they really made it hard for me. But I worked my tail off and finally won some respect, you know. And I won the only time they gave a local Emmy for anchors. They only did it 1 year, and I didn't. I went. I was brand new as an anchor, and I wore my black tie outfit and looked good. But it was Brokaw and oh gosh, who are the rest of them in the I can't even remember, but all of the anchors from all over the LA area. And I won. I couldn't believe it.
I think Lynn and I were there that night because we went with Tom and Marianne Snyder.
Okay.
And we were in tuxedos and and there you were, and you were the winner.
I know. And I had no idea. I still don't know why. But I did become respected as an anchor and did it for many, many years.
You know what impressed me about you and talking to you, it's even more fortified. You advanced yourself each step of the way, and I get the idea that you pretty much did it on your own, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I mean, Ross, you and I worked at the station long enough to see people brought in, good looking, graduated Harvard, had an uncle who was a senator, got the job. They were introduced to everybody. They didn't do the work. And really, to do the work, you got to learn. It's different everywhere, and everything that you do is different. You have to learn each time how to. So I did, but they didn't. A lot of them didn't. They were in and out. There was one called Star Jones. Remember her? Yeah, they brought her in, and she was a lawyer, but she lasted a couple of months. You got to do it. You got to do the work. People think, that we go in there and we just are handed some copy and we read it. Not that way. I wrote every word I ever said. It was written. We had writers.
I did too.
Oh.
And I never used a teleprompter, Kelly, because I was nearsighted. I couldn't read it.
Oh. Yeah. Well, and then when you wrote it, when you tweaked it, first of all, they become very familiar with it. And then it's written in your style. So it's a lot easier for you. So you're actually talking it. You're not just reading it. And so a lot of people, my daughter wanted to be a reporter. And I told her those things. I said, don't just cover the stories. She worked out of Oxnard, and she worked for CNN. Don't just go where they send you. Effort some stories on your own. Say, look, here's something that I really would love to cover. And I taught her how to do it, and she did it too. It's work. WORK, it's a 4-letter word, but it'll get you what you want. Yeah.
Well, for instance, how did you get on What's My Line?
Oh, well, somebody at the radio station where I was working, I know, wait. Oh, no, I remember now. There was a write-up of me doing as the first woman helicopter, reporter in TV Guide. And it turns out that's how they chose people. The producers at What's My Line were looking at everything to bring people. And it was also in Time magazine, and they found me. Mm-hmm. They found me and called the station, and that's how that got set up.
All right. So quite a few years later,
oh yeah,
TV Guide reported that the first Los Angeles newscaster to be paid $1 million a year was not Jerry Dunphy, not Tom Brokaw, not Tom Snyder, but Kelly Lange. And if that's true, how'd that make you feel?
Pretty good. My agent, I got calls from a lot of agents. You should have an agent. I said, I have enough jobs. I don't want an agent. We're going to get you better jobs, they said. So they got me a guy called Michael, what's his name? The big one.
Ed Hookstratton?
No, not Ed. Mike Ovitz.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And he was doing my money from that time on. And yeah, got a big raise. It was a big deal. Yeah. It's all gone, Ross. I got to tell you, I'm now broke.
No.
I spent it all.
Bless you.
Yeah.
I left Channel 4 in December of 1976 to join the Dodgers
Yes, you did.
announcing team, and you hosted a farewell party for me in your home, which was so kind of you to do. And I never forgot that, and Lynn didn't either.
That, yeah. Didn't we have a cake that was made of like a baseball?
I probably so.
Yeah.
And you had all of our friends from the news business, and the big surprise was when Ed McMahon walked in the door.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'd met him one time, I think, but he came.
Yeah.
But that same month, Kelly became a television news anchor. Was the same month I left Channel 4, and you were a news anchor for 22 years, December of 1976 to December of 1988. That was unbelievable.
98.
Yeah, 98. And I will also work in, since I'm talking a little bit about the Dodgers, your lovely daughter, Kelly, worked at Dodger Stadium, didn't she?
Oh my goodness. You know, she came home from school one night and she said her best friend, Mandy Morheim, lived across the street, was getting a job in a stationery store in Beverly Hills after school. And they said they could use another young gal, and can I take the job? And I said, well, you know, sit down, honey, let's talk about it. I said, do you have a passion for stationery? And she looked at me, she said, what? And I said, you know, do you love the colors and the texture and the parchment and the print and stationery? Does it turn you on, you know? And she looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, look, when you think about taking a job, committing to a job, it's very important that you commit to something you really love. Now, you tell me, what do you have a passion for? Well, I knew she was a giant Dodger fan, you know? And so we talked about that. And I said, well, if you want to get a job after school, why don't you find out if you can get a job at Dodger Stadium? And she said, could I do that? I said, I don't know. Go find out. I had bought her a new car. She was 16 and she had her license. And I said, get in your car and go to Dodger Stadium and find out. She said, well, what do I do there? I said, I don't know. I have no idea, honey. Go and talk to somebody. Where do I go to apply for a job? Blah, blah, blah. So she did. And that night she came home after hours at Dodger Stadium talking to everybody. And she was dejected. She said, they don't hire anybody under 18. That's when I called Tommy Lasorda, right? I called Tommy and I said, look, my daughter, I knew him pretty well. We all did. He was LA, right?
Yeah.
And I said, she's 16 going on 35. She's really smart. And she just is, she has Dodger blue blood in her veins, you know? So that's how she got the job there. And her first job, they put her in what they called the dungeon.
That's right, down below.
Yeah, down below, where she wasn't selling T-shirts. She was piling up T-shirts and souvenirs and stuff on carts for people to sell upstairs. She never saw the light of day.
Right.
She loved it. Are you kidding? She was touching Dodger stuff, you know?
Right.
And then there's a guy, I don't know if you remember, Danny Goodman.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, Danny.
The marvelous marketing director.
Yeah.
And he was so good.
And he loved her, you know, I mean, because she was a hard worker like we are. And so he brought her up into the gift shop. And that's where your wife and you saw her, you know, working in the gift shop. And then somebody else,
Don Sutton helped her, didn't he?
Well, Don loved her. We all loved Don. Was he a great guy? But then she got the job. They recruited her and put her on as a program seller, where you sell programs for an hour or two before the game and about 2 or 3 innings, and then you get to knock it off and go up and watch the game. Yeah. This is where she got to know all of them. She loved Don especially, and he gave her his jacket that he wore in a playoff game, and it still had Dodger mud all over it, and she still has it. and she never watched it. She wouldn't, of course. And she went to a playoff game. You know, the last time they had the playoffs in LA, she went and she wore Don's shirt with his number and his name, and she stood in front of Don's picture that's up at Dodger Stadium. You know, all the big hero. So she's still a big Dodger fan, and she worked there all during high school. I mean, no, the last 3 years of high school and 4 years of college. That was her weekend, and
Yeah. You got some glamorous NBC network assignments, regular guest host of the Today and the Tomorrow shows,
yes,
co-host of the Tournament of Roses parade for 10 years. You also co-hosted a program one time with Willard Scott, who was the weatherman for the Today Show.
oh, well, I know. I knew him from doing the Today Show so many times. First time I met Willard, they pick you up at 4 a.m. in New York at your hotel to make sure you get there. They said, and I got in the car, and next to me is sitting Willard Scott. I never met him. And he said, hello. He said, hold this. And he had a box in his hand. He gave me the box. And so he said, while he reached into his pockets to get something else. 4 a.m. I got his box, and there was a jolt in the car, and the box flew off my lap. And he said, be careful with that. That's my hair. But I got to know Willard, and of course everybody. I worked with Tom Brokaw there.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I was invited, because I did the Rose Parade here in Pasadena for 10 years with Michael Landon. And I got called to do Rose Parades in other places, in Arizona, in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Rose Parade.
Right.
And that's the one I did with Willard.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in my office now, and you can't see it, but that's the only picture I have on my office of the team. It's Willard and me. He was a dog. He was a sweetheart. Yeah.
Well, after winning many local Emmys in 28 years on KNBC, you left the station. Why?
Well, I had started writing novels, and one of my best friends was Sue Grafton. She wrote mysteries.
Yes.
Alphabet mysteries. And Mary Higgins Clark was a friend of mine, because I was in New York a lot and I knew her. And I was writing novels, and I was going out on the book cycle, and the signing books in bookstores and doing special roundtable luncheons with, and I thought I could make a good living writing books. I did okay. I did fine. I sold a lot of books. It was never going to be like television money, but I had done it long enough.
Had you written Trophy Wife at that time?
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, a mutual friend of yours and mine, I met on the book tour, and that is Rafer Johnson.
Oh yeah. Wonderful.
Oh my God. And I know that you're still working to get him the Medal of Freedom, right?
That is correct.
Rafer and I became very close friends. He lived very near my house up in the valley. And what an angel. I mean, his story, living in a boxcar when, his parents were sharecroppers, and how's that going, by the way?
Well, we're on it, and Tom Brokaw's working with me on that.
Oh, thank
I
God.
found out that there has never been a posthumous winner of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And Tom, who has that medal himself,
Yes, he does. I remember.
said, and he agreed with me when I said, if there's anybody who deserves this medal, it's Rafer Johnson for what he did. And there must have been, Kelly, 200 or 300 different winners over the years, and he has always been bypassed. But we're making some inroads on it, and hopefully in a few months, we'll get the good news that he made it. But you're absolutely right. One of the finest human beings
Yes.
we both ever knew, Rafer Johnson, and also a great athlete who overcame several injuries, and just never gave up on what he did. And when we talked to him a lot over the years, and Lynn one day said to him, Rafer, you could have done anything you wanted to do. You could have been a movie star. You could have done a lot of things. You chose, though, to go another route. Why? And he said, because of the people who helped me when I was a youngster growing up in Kingsburg, California, would take me to track meets. All of them were white fathers. And I said to myself at that time, I want everybody to be the best they can be.
Yes.
And that was his motto.
Oh, yeah. And if they've never done it posthumously, as you know, and I know, there is always a first time, and there will be. There will be. Just believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in 1999, you were given the coveted Governor's Award by the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences.
Oh, yeah.
In 2010, you were presented with the Golden Mike's Lifetime Achievement Award by the Radio and Television News Association of Southern California. And you were really into the book writing at that time. You told me, I think, one time that you started writing while you were still a news anchor, partially to relieve insomnia working on the 11 o'clock news at night.
Yeah, I don't know if you had that, but a lot of newsies that I know never got off that clock, which we worked the 4, the 6, and the 11. And then after the 11 o'clock news, we never went home. I don't know if you knew Wendy Harris, who was the producer then.
No, I did not. No.
Well, we would sit and we'd archive the show while she did that and talk about assignments for the next day, and then break out the wine and have a lot of laughs. And we had the meeting about what went wrong with the show, which the meeting was always longer than the show. Anyway, I never got out of there till like 2 in the morning, but it was fun. It was part of what we did. And it was good. And it was informative. But by the time I drove home with my dog, I always brought my dog to work. I couldn't sleep because you're still wired,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I had the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
because both of us kind of had the same career pattern. I did late night news with you and the others. Then I went to the Dodgers for 28 years, and they were all night games, and you couldn't just come down off the hill at midnight. So I went through the same thing you did.
Oh yeah. So that's why. And so when I get home, everybody was asleep. There was nobody to talk to and nobody to play with. And and I read novels. I love novels. I love mysteries. And one day I just said, I could write one of these. So I started, instead of reading at night till the light came in the windows and the book fell off the bed onto the floor, I started writing one. And I just figured out how to do it. I never had any lessons or anything. And the first one was a big seller, and then that's how I started writing. Yes, I would write in the middle of the night when nobody would call me, nobody would bother me, and it was fun.
Well, you created a main character that you named Maxie Poole, who's really the heroine in all 6 of your books. Tell everybody who Maxie is. Is she another Kelly Lange?
Well, yeah, she's me. She's named after my sister, by the way.
Huh.
But, just for fun, because I didn't know anything was going to go anywhere. And yeah, she's exactly me, except she's taller, thinner, younger, better looking, and sexier, than me. But yeah, and she's a reporter, anchor, talk show host, all the stuff I was, except she's not a novelist. She's me in the newsroom. And I learned so much writing books. It was published by Simon & Schuster and Warner Books. And I would write something crazy that happened. And I would write, my character would go through this. And the editor would say, that's not credible, take that out. And I would tell her, well, it happened to me in the newsroom. And she'd say, that doesn't matter. It's not credible to your readers. So I learned that. Like, I just saw a movie called Licorice Pizza. None of it made any sense to me. It's a big hot movie right now. And somebody sent me a thing saying that the guy who wrote it, he went through all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned. If it's not credible to your viewer or your reader, it doesn't work. It doesn't fly as a good story. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. And I found myself thinking all day long about, getting an idea for a character to do, or anybody can do it, I think.
Well, another thing about your books, you're socially conscious in your books. And a good example was the one where Maxie cannot drink wine before she drives her car.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ross, you know more about me than I do. It's amazing all the stuff that you came up with. Yeah. And when I was working at KNBC, we got bags of mail every day, right? And I hired, do you remember Sally Lynch? She was
Yes, I do very well.
wonderful, our
Wonderful
newsroom
lady.
mother, wonderful newsroom mother. I
Yeah.
hired her to answer with me every bit of mail, every piece of mail, except the ones that were so crazy and written in the margin in crayon or threatening or something.
Yeah.
But, I answered every piece of mail
Yeah.
because it was important to me to do that, because I realized, my God, I'm touching people.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
would
yeah.
write me,
Yeah.
they would write me about their lives. And one time I was making a speech. It was a book signing speech in Torrance, California. And I went there and I was introduced by the mayor of Torrance. And she had a piece of paper in her hand and she said, I want to introduce Kelly Lange. You all know her on television, but 7 years ago, she wrote me a letter and she had it in her hand.
Wow.
And she had written to me, I forgot, of course, because you don't remember. And she had written to me that she got a divorce, her husband divorced her, she was very sick, she wanted to kill her, so all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I wrote her a letter as giving her some advice and
Oh.
telling her, get over it, open your eyes, pull yourself up and get out there and live your life that God gave you and blah,
Yeah.
blah. She
Yeah.
read the letter. I couldn't even remember it.
I know.
But she said, this changed my life.
Yeah.
So it was very important to me to answer people who had problems or who wanted to just talk or
Well, I didn't have to answer as many letters as you did.
about sports. Are you kidding?
Not as much, although I did get a letter one time and the envelope said, Mr. Raw, R-A-W, Porter, S-P-O-R-T-E-R. I want to tell you about the people who've had some trouble with internal
Sport.
organs.
Yeah.
So Ross Porter
Yeah.
tried to answer him, but
Well,
that was the only one.
Yeah.
I got to tell a personal story.
Yeah.
One night you were having a book signing, I think in Encino. And that night, Lynn and some of her friends were going to go to the Hollywood Bowl for a performance. And they got in the car and Lynn said, wait a minute, Kelly's having her book signing tonight. Let's drop by there on the way. I said, all right. They came to your book signing and you were so interesting that they never got to the Hollywood Bowl. They stayed with you.
Wow. And that's an expensive ticket too.
Oh, wow.
But about the Raw Sporter, we had a woman, and you probably don't, she wasn't doing this when you were there, but her name was Karna Small, K-A-R-N-A Small. And she worked in San Francisco and she did teases into our news all day long. And we did teases into their news. That was a deal we had.
Yeah,
And she
sure.
would end her piece every day saying, I'm Karna Small for Channel 4 News. And I got a letter one time and it was from a woman. And she said, why does that woman keep telling us she's kind of small? We don't care. We don't care how big she is. Why does she keep saying that? I put it on the bulletin board because it was so funny, Karna Small. I'd never met her even. But yeah, they do that.
Were you allowed to give the titles to your books? Or were the publishers the one who did that?
No, I did. Yeah. I found out that in publishing, Ross, and by the way, isn't it about time you wrote a book? You've got such a life. Oh my, you're having such a life. But, when you're in news, the editors, we have to cut this piece down from 1:45
Right.
to 40 seconds. And they just chop off the middle, something in the middle. But in publishing, you're the final arbiter. You get to decide. They tell you, they say, they give you notes and they say, this is not good. Can we change it to this? I usually took about 85% of all of their notes because they knew better than I did about what sells a book. But I got to write my own blurbs on the side of the book. Usually it was their company that did it. And after a couple, 2-3 books, they let me do it. And they let me choose the title, yeah.
Kelly, do you have movie rights to all your books? Is that one of your dreams?
No, I haven't thought about it, but that would be nice, wouldn't it? Maybe I should think about that because there hasn't been a character since Murphy Brown, who was a news person, and maybe maybe my Maxie should make an appearance. Do you think?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Kelly, tell us what your philosophy in life is.
Interesting question, Ross. I am a science of mind, and that is not a religion, it's a teaching. And I go to church every Sunday, and I believe it. And science of mind, the main tenet is your mind creates your experience. So believe it, you will see it. If you're going in for a job interview and you say, oh gosh, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I don't know enough, you won't get it, because you put forth that kind of vibe and people get it. We read each other all the time. We read people's faces. And so I always expect the best. And as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else.
Yeah.
And that works for me.
Hmm.
And I've been so lucky, my goodness, I've been so lucky. And I'm very thankful. I'm very, very grateful for everything that I have, everything I am, everything I was, everything I've done. I'm grateful. Grateful that we were born in this country, this freedom we have. Yeah. And be careful of our democracy right now. It's fragile. I'm still a news junkie, Ross.
Yeah.
First thing in the morning, the TV goes on and it's on all day. But yeah. I'm grateful. I've been so grateful. You too.
Yes, I do. Yeah, we do.
I know. Yeah.
Kelly, this has been a genuine pleasure to talk with you. Stay in good health. Continue to live that productive life that you are living, and blessings to you, my dear.
Thank you so much. I adore you, and keep on keeping on, Ross. We love you. Mwah. And hi to Lynn.
Great Kelly Lange.
Thank you.